know what? I think it's time for a fucking rant. Welcome to my tavern. How can I help? Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of A Day in the Tavern. Joining me, Nate or Beardy as host again, and well, this week I kind of want to go on a bit of a rant. Yes, we geeks do that quite often, and while the majority of the time geeks tend to have a rant at somebody for mispronouncing or misusing something. For instance, when people somehow get messed up and think Batman's part of the Marvel comic universe, and it should be clear now he's part of DC. But before I get into what will be a rant-soaked episode of me genuinely just being annoyed at certain things in the geek comic book world or whatever, let me tell you guys a little bit about this group called the Crit Takers. So, I want to rant. That's a normal thing to do nowadays, isn't it? You know, past the whole point of people being offended by everything, things like that. But no, I want a bit of a rant about the comic book, the geeky world, the games, and everything. Because, well, we geeks need to rant every so often. It's something that needs to be done. And it can't just be the case of that we're ranting at somebody because they're getting something wrong, which we often see a lot nowadays, especially with social media being involved in everything. But it's also trying to nitpick at certain things in these geek worlds. Now, I want to start by saying, first off, anyone who thinks just because you're a fan of something means you have to accept and enjoy every part of it, wrong. The first episode of this podcast, I talked a lot about some of the things that I enjoy, some of the big geek things I massively geek out about that I will go crazy over. There are things in those subjects that I will never be happy with. I've talked I've talked a fair bit about how the last 3 Star Wars films don't equal up to the first 6 at all. And I'm not talking about Rogue One and the Solo films, which Rogue One was good. Solo, Harrison Ford's the only Han Solo for me. I'm going to put it simply as that. But they just didn't match up to what the earlier Star Wars films were for me, and I don't think they'll ever will. Yes, when I have a Star Wars marathon, I will proceedingly watch them through because they're part of the whatever canonical canon until that gets erased at some point. And because Rise of Skywalker was actually the decent out of the 3 films, which kind of makes it weird for a trilogy being the last film the best, because it's usually the first one, or in certain cases the second one, never the third. But again, the complaining I can have about it is not necessarily about the storyline or the films themselves. It's things like the choreography, the character development that was done through it. The last film, Rise of Skywalker, made massive leaps in character development, made a good story plot and hook that made a lot of things better for me. But at the same time, you still have Rey, who swings a lightsaber like a baseball bat. I'm sorry, you just don't. Come on. This choreography on that could have been a lot better. Just so many different things. But that's just like one thing I want to rant out about. I mean, there's so many things I could just nitpick. And I'm going to. I know it's going to be a bit of a completely different episode, this one, where instead I'm just like talking about a subject and trying to bring a sense of understanding class. Not a class, we're geeks, we always have class. But an understanding to it and bring light to certain things that may be needed. This is something similar, but instead it is a poignant thing where I'm just poking at something for a fair bit of time to go, this is wrong. At least through my eyes. So I'm going to stick with Star Wars for a little bit. I've started my rant on Star Wars already. Might as well see this one through to the end. And it is revolving basically around the last three films, 7, 8, and 9. Like I said, I'm keeping Rogue One and Solo film out for the time being. And I might have to throw in issues with things from The Mandalorian as well, since that is such a nice reclass of, well, a lot. But I can begin straight off with the fact that Episode 7, The Force Awakens, is basically a New Hope just redone. Anyone who hasn't figured that out yet, wake up, smell the shit-covered roses you're probably still smelling, and realize that, alright? All they're doing is they made the Death Star, but they made it bigger. They made it so it can destroy several planets at once instead of just one. And this, that, and the other. You have the whatever stormtroopers out there are now that are just basically mind-controlled or whatever, like infant kids raised up under the Empire yoke. And this, that, and the other. You had Supreme Leader Snoke, which was just basically another version of Palpatine, which later to be just a clone of Palpatine. And things like that. You had a masked villain with a red lightsaber who it was Darth Vader's grandson at the end of the fucking day, wasn't it? Of course. So many things they just cop from it. Oh, we have to destroy it. We have to someone who knows an inside. Something like, say, secret plans put into R2-D2 and things like that. Yes, there's some different twists and turns in this, that, and the other. But it was ultimately a New Hope redone, rehashed. What was it? It's not a remake. The word's completely gone out of my head. Y'all know what I mean, though. It's not a remake. A remake is they start from fresh and work from the ground up. It's I've completely forgotten it now. I'm probably going to remember some way through this recording, but ultimately they just rehashed it and sent it out on its way, which is a bit of a piss take to all Star Wars fans, especially to the oldie Star Wars fans who were there when A New Hope first came out. I said it. When I went to see it with my dad, halfway through the film, I did go, have they just copied A New Hope to this? They basically had. It was nice to see that they did go a slight different direction with The Last Jedi, and away from how Empire Strikes Back was. Empire Strikes Back was about the Empire getting the upper hand again and kind of showing that, yeah, we're still around kind of thing. While The Last Jedi was a case of, yeah, well, let's just do this instead. I mean, don't get me wrong, they still had the giant walkers, just instead it was towards the end of the film instead of the beginning. Oh, yeah, sorry, this is going to be like some massive, if you've not seen all the Star Wars films, I will be dropping spoiler alerts on this one. They've been out for a while, and if you're a Star Wars fan and not seen them yet, it's your own fucking fault, I'm sorry. But, yeah, so the walkers were at the end of that one instead. Yes, you had a similar master teaching, a master Jedi teaching the new Padawan student who somehow becomes, like, decently well knight by the next film without almost seemingly any extra training over time and things like that. And yes, you did see him kind of just fade away into nothing, go Luke Skywalker, and come back as a ghost. I mean, it was good to see Yoda back, don't get me wrong. And then we get to the last film, Rise of Skywalker. Now, other than this case of, yes, it's a bit of there are a fair bit of two-dimensional character building points in there, and this, that, and the other, and certain things in my aspect could have just been left out. They didn't need to be put in there. But all in all, this is one of the bits in the show where I'm not rant so much. It's that film didn't annoy me so much simply because it was a good film that ended a bad trilogy. Things about the film that annoyed me, yeah, I'm ranting, not forgetting, are again, Rey was a very two-dimensional character. I'm not going to blame the actress. She's an amazing actress. I'm just going to blame the writing. She was designed as a very two-dimensional character, and they tried to give her a bit of life. Okay, it turns out she's the granddaughter of Palpatine, and this, that, and the other, and that's why she has this force, that's why she's able to use force lightning, which is a very dark side attempt. It was a good way to add to it, but it still made her two-dimensional, especially when they did oh yeah, here's the Sith version of you that could be, with the utterly horrible glaive-like lightsaber that just flips open. It's like, you don't need to do that. But aside from those couple of hiccups, yeah, that film was alright. Let's talk a little bit about The Mandalorian now. Now, I enjoyed The Mandalorian. I enjoyed both seasons. I enjoyed the surprises, the jumps. More spoiler alerts here. I loved Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker coming back at the end and having a very tribute home to how Darth Vader just killed a bunch of rebels in Rebel 1. Absolutely amazing. They picked some phenomenal actors to be playing all the parts, even especially the one that fired recently because, well, people just don't know when to keep their mouth shut. Look at me saying that when I'm ranting on my own show. But, yeah. Amazing actors, everything was amazing, and it brought like some great characters, because I've watched the Clone Wars, I've watched Rebels as well, and to see some of the characters like Ahsoka Tano coming back as well was amazing. There's a little that I can rant, if there is anything I can rant about The Mandalorian. If my dad was here, my dad would rant about it for endless, and I'd understand where my dad's coming from. So I'll take it from my dad's point of view. So, and I can probably understand why a lot more older Star Wars fans are probably going to see it this way. So to them, Star Wars was Jedi and Sith. That's how it was started as. That's how it was seen as. And the prequel films gave a lot more light to this flame. That's what Star Wars is. It's a constant battle between the Jedi and Sith. Otherwise, it's just another mundane sci-fi universe. You have this Jedi, you have the Sith. That's what makes that Star Wars unique. I like that. I like the idea of the Force. I like it there. And yes, well, you have Guru, Baby Yoda, who's a Jedi, same race as Yoda. And my dad's complaint was, well, why is he still a baby? Shouldn't he at least be older now? And I do kind of agree with that. I mean, yes, Yoda's race can live for an incredibly long time. Considering that The Mandalorian takes place after Episode 6, and Guru was even in the temple when Ahsoka Tano was there, which, bear in mind, she left the Order in Clone Wars. So that's between Episode 2 and 3. So Guru would easily be at least whatever age he was from then, with an extra 20-something odd years added on top of that, at least. And he's still a baby? I mean, I get the point of they want the baby character, like, to make the Mando more kind of like a fatherly figure and have somebody to attach to. And then when he kind of gave him up at the end of the last episode, it was that case of he's doing this and the homage of like Darth Vader wanting, or Anakin Skywalker wanting to see his son Luke with his own eyes, kind of thing, taking his own helmet off against his creed. Yes, those are some of the things I can get. I can get why the older generations would probably be annoyed about that, and anyone with a logical brain at the same as well as like, well, why is he a baby? Unless there's more about this race that they've not told us. But then, even if I'm right understanding, the writers don't even know much about the race that Yoda is either. They don't even have a name for the race. And I genuinely think that's all I'm going to be able to rant about The Mandalorian. The rest of it was done incredibly well. I enjoyed it. It was I loved it because it was an incredibly good and different take of the Star Wars universe, which is something I've been deeply getting more involved with a lot more recently, including listening on audiobook to some of the older books from the Old Republic stuff, which, as much as I know it's all not canon at the minute, I do hope these guys do make at least a good part of that into canon and do some stories and like series behind some of this all stuff, because I would just love to see the Great Sith Wars and the Grey Jedis, because I like the idea of the Grey Jedi because it gives a proper sense of balance. And that's another thing I rant about Star Wars. It's like, why haven't they brought the Grey Jedi back in properly? It's something I want to see. Something I know a lot of other people want to see. You can go on the Star Wars wiki page and you can read up about the different points of what a Grey Jedi is. There's several different reasons to points in this of what the Grey Jedi can be. Hell, there are even a lot of things on there when I was reading on it that Qui-Gon Jinn was considered a Grey Jedi simply because he just went against the will of the Jedi Council. So see, there's already something you can go there, and if they want to generally go back and give Rey a proper character development and a proper story that's going to build a decent character, well, it's already proven that she can use the dark side of the Force. Force lightning is considered a dark side ability. So, she's trained in the light ways and the dark ways of the Force. It would be great to move her forward as a Grey Jedi, and that'd be a perfect way to build a good story around her. Just, make sure she has proper fighting choreography. That's the word I'm looking for. But yeah, the Grey Jedi stuff is something I would love to see in Star Wars. Is one of the next things I would love to see in the Star Wars franchise brought to light. Whether animated or done in live action, whether done in movies or in TV series. It's something that needs to be done. And we need to go back, and I think it would be great to go back to the Old Republic as well. There's a bunch of Star Wars shows that have been announced. I'm looking forward to the Bad Batch, because that looks like it's generally going to be an epic show. But we need to go back to the Old Republic. We can't keep circling around this whole during the Clone Wars era and the Empire era. We need to go back further. I'd love them to do more bit about like Darth Revan and Darth Malak, about this beginning of Khan and the Brotherhood of Sith, and things like that. And I would love to see like the downfall of Sith, where Darth Bane rose up, took down the Sith, all the Sith, and then created the Rule of Two, which is something that the Sith have now prided themselves on, which is what where we are currently with the Star Wars timeline. And this is all stuff that would be great to go back and look. And a lot of people have even risen up and said, well, we want to know a bit more about Darth Plagueis, a.k.a. Darth Sidious, Old Master. Because that'd be another one to explore down. So these are all these stories, they need to be explored. They can't just be left on their own, willy-nilly, with nothing to do. They need to be explored. There's something that needs to go back and look into this stuff. That's enough for Star Wars at the minute. I genuinely think I could probably rant about all the different stories that they could do on Star Wars for a while. But I'm only giving myself an hour, so, I can't. Slide over to comic books next. So comic books are the biggest, next to Star Wars at the minute, and thanks to Disney Plus, comic books are probably the next biggest thing going out there, particularly Marvel comics. Disney Plus have taken more of the, have taken the rights of the MCU as well as working on the rights for X-Men and Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and all of that as well. Next thing you know, they'll probably go gunning after DC, which I probably wouldn't mind too much. It means we probably get the perfect enabled Justice League versus Avengers comic book series, or one of the even more amazing comic book series is when they clashed to completely and merged several of the characters together, which how you came out with Batman, the Wolverine Batman, which people have probably seen a lot of. But let's start with the fact that so many people in this world can't seem to understand the difference between comic book manufacturers. Yes, you can understand the difference between a clothing brand and who makes what fucking drink, but you can't understand that Batman's not a fucking Marvel comic. He's DC, always has been. Just because Batman's the most popular DC comic book character, because he's the best one to make movies of, because he has a massive role gallery, and Joker is like one of the best villains ever created, he's heavily used. And understanding to people, and I get like your standard casual fan are going to get confused. I mean, a lot of people probably don't even know that something like Hellboy is that originally started as a comic book. The Losers, that film, fucking can't remember how long ago it was, that Chris Evans and a number of other people in it, including Idris Elba, that started as a comic book. I mean, you could tell if you watch that film, you can tell at the very end, and if you really watch behind the scenes. Watchmen, part of DC Comics. So many of these things started out as comics. Riddick, Vin Diesel's big movie thing, he did initially start that as a comic book and things like that as well. I mean, I might be a little bit wrong there, but it has that feeling of it probably started as a comic book. And now a lot of other things are making their way to comic books. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started life as a manga back over in Japan, I think. Yeah, I'm probably wrong on that one, but see, this is what I mean, where you could probably believe some guy on the internet saying this stuff and follow down that line. You need to understand and find the research. Comic books are big history for us geeks. They're one thing that prided geeks and started a lot of people along that line of being geeks. It's fine, it's understandable, it's fair, it's great. If you get to sit down and read a comic book, there's a really good feeling to it. And seeing all these things come to life in cinema and TV shows is even better. You can't just rely on watching the films. You have to understand the comics as well. You can't just go along with whatever is going out there. Because especially, like, if you're going to be like in the next Marvel film, whenever that's actually going to come out, whenever we're allowed back in cinemas again with the pandemic going on, there are people are going to be laughing or cheering at a certain bit, and if you're not going to know what it is, it's going to be a problem. Well, not necessarily, but I think you all know what I mean for that one. Let me get to the real kind of rant I want to make about this. And this has nothing to do with Marvel Comics. This has everything to do with DC Comics, in particular Superman. So, I've made it... I've not covered this up. I've not hidden this fact even in the slightest. I do not like Superman as a hero, as a superhero at all. Look at him. Look at this guy. He's an alien. He's treated as a patriot figure for America. He can fly. He has super speed, super strength, bulletproof, laser eyes, cool breath, X-ray vision. And he's a good guy. Yeah. So much of that just sets me off. It's unreal. Let's then add all that to a person, and then he decides to live a mild-mannered life as Clark Kent, because it's how he was raised on a farm. Fair enough, the raising part. And this and the other. And that's kind of where they put this consciousness in him of that you just need to be good and save the people. You lost your world. You don't want to lose this one. Fine. But you can't constantly keep him in that state, especially with the amount of shit and devastation we see in the world. If you ever seen the two-parter Batman Returns, two animated movies, both they're really really good to watch. I personally suggest watching them if you want to know a bit more about Batman lore, and especially like some other stuff like when he gets older. Now, towards the end of the second one, I'm going to do a bit of spoiler alert here. So if you've not seen them, pause this now, go watch them, and come back. Okay? Because I'm going to kind of spoil a bit of what happens in it. At least in the second one. I'm not going to spoil what happens in the first one. But in the second one, it's the Batman vs Superman moment. It was animated long before it was put into the DCU. Before Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck were Batman and Superman. Now, the animated fight was a lot better, personally, because in the animated fight they brought in Green Arrow, who was the main counterpoint for Batman. He had a kryptonite-loaded arrow for Superman. And that fight was more brutal because it had a lot more emotion into it. Now, yes, Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, the only good part as far as I was concerned is when the fighting between Batman and Superman started. Doomsday came in and Wonder Woman came in. That was the only good part of it for me. I didn't care much for the rest of the film. In fact, I don't care for much of the MCU, if I'm going to be honest. Suicide Squad was good, but it focused a little bit too much on Deadshot and Harley Quinn. That's it. So now I genuinely can't go any further than that because that's genuinely the truth for me. But yeah, so it was the Batman vs Superman fight was done animated long before it was done try to kick off the DCU. And this is kind of a bit closer to where Superman becomes someone who I can understand a bit more with that side. I've said this before, if you've not read or played the Injustice games or the Injustice comic book series, Earth 1. So I will do, again, more spoiler drops. I told you this is going to be a incredibly spoiler episode for a lot of different things. So, in the Injustice series, a bunch of the bad guys kind of get together and start planning a way to properly tear and take down the Justice League. Joker has a perfectly and insane idea and pulls it off. He plants a bomb in Metropolis, ties it to the heartbeats of Lois, Superman's girlfriend or I believe wife at the time, who, by the way, just in context, is also pregnant with Clark's kid. He then used some special toxin to confuse Clark Kent, aka Superman, into thinking that Lois Lane is Doomsday. So, Superman, obviously not a fan of Doomsday, ends up going to town and absolutely killing Doomsday. The person who he thinks is Doomsday, who's actually Lois Lane. He kills her, their unborn child. And Metropolis, and a bomb just goes off and destroys much of Metropolis. Now, if you're thinking if you're put in that position, you'd snap, or you think, oh no, I'd have the mental power and I would still be, I'm Superman, I'm this force of good. I'm glad the writers didn't take that approach. He snaps, goes to where the Joker is, and rips his heart out. From that point on, Superman is put through as a glorious and hurtful dictator, ruling primarily with fear against everyone, and aligning with this new, darker Justice League, of a sense, to reign over everybody. That's how you use someone like Superman properly. And Superman's meant to be the shining little just light of good and everything in the comic books. Fine. But just more of his evil side. Come on. Let him bend more to the will of what it is. He's an alien, yes, but you're going to stand here and tell me that even if Krypton had survived their destruction or however it happened, that he wouldn't have eventually been like that even without his powers. It's hard. It's hard for me to understand and believe that kind of side of it, just because I know the humanity race. See, this is why I like Batman. While albeit we all don't have billions of dollars in a way or some massive bat cave with a bunch of cool toys and gadgets, he is human. A lot of things he's learned himself. Yes, and a lot of things he does in life, like if you kind of read the comic books properly, is achievable by us as standard. You can do micro sleeping. I don't think that's the correct term, but you can get your body used to only 2 to 3 hours of sleep and function properly for several days at a time. You can learn several different forms of martial arts like karate, jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, krav maga, and things like that. You can learn about detective agency. You can kind of see and work out puzzles, things like that, and he's managed to do all that. That seems human to me. Yes, I know it's comic books. They have superpowers. Yes, I know. But I'm not talking about superpowers. I'm talking about believability as a person. The only thing that gets me with Batman is his no-kill policy. Simply because, which even to that point doesn't make much sense even to me. I get the quote is that if I kill, there's still the same amount of killers out in the world, and it's just like, yeah, but you're not killing one person. These people aren't going to stop killing. Oh, you beat them up a little bit, they go into jail, their friends break them out because, I mean, comic books, they always get broken out. They go off on another killing spree and kill 100 more people, probably, let's say. So, which one's the bigger guilt? Okay, let me kill this bad person who's done wrong, ending his line of killing here. One person dies. No, I'm going to beat this person up, send them to jail. They're going to break out and kill 100 people. 100 people more die. I know morality in whatever story of the book, fine. But these are the things that not necessarily need to be talked about, but need to be ranted about. Alright? Let's do some bit of comparison as well, because so many people want to try and go for the comparison of DC over Marvel. They're the two biggest comic book rivals. I would like to talk about Dark Horse, but I don't know a lot of Dark Horse comic stuff or heroes or whatever. So we'll stick with DC and Marvel because the two main competitors out there are grabbing for people. And I'm not going to focus on the massive wide universes of both. Particularly because I know more of Marvel side, because I'm a big Marvel junkie, more than DC. So let's pick at the Avengers against the Justice League. I can already tell, if you're watching this, I can already tell in your head you're already making your mind up on who would do better. Some of you are big DC fans, so you're going like, yeah, okay, there's this, that, and the other. Some of you are big Marvel fans, and you'd be like, well, yeah, there's reasons why they would win. But I think it would be a lot more even than you think. And I think a lot more people would probably agree with me on that one as well. So let's just set aside that they're all heroes. Let's set that aside. Just some random grudge match somewhere. What would be your lineups? Let's take the original Avengers from the MCU. So we have Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Hawkeye, and Black Widow. Right, so now we need 6 members of the Justice League. I don't think that's going to be too hard. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and let's throw Marvin Manhunter in there, maybe. Yeah, Marvin Manhunter. Yep, that seems like a. Oh no! Actually, let's think about it. Let's put Flash in. Flash is a lot more of a recognizable character on that front. Cool. So there, 6-on-6 grudge match. I mean, if you actually think when we go into what the grudge match would be like on here, I'm sorry, no, I ain't got enough time to be going on about that. And as I've said, this is me ranting. I'll leave your imaginations at the minute for what to do that, but I might do a video later on talking about how that fight might come. Probably not on this podcast, but yeah. So let's move away from Marvel then, or let's move away from comic books now. Rented on comic books for a fair bit. And I'm starting to slowly run out of steam on how pissed off I can be at a creation like Superman. Um, let's go to one of my big ones. Let's talk about a little bit D&D and the stuff I can rant about D&D. Now, I like the D&D memes. I share a lot of the memes myself whenever I see them because they're so accurate and they're so funny. Yes, bear in mind I've only played 5th edition D&D. I've not played any earlier editions, so I don't know how clunky of an edition 4th edition was. I don't know how brilliant of an edition 3 and 3.5 were. I don't know the original roots of D&D and then a D&D as well. I know 5th edition. I know the expansions they keep bringing out with 5th edition. I know the different things you can do with it. I know the more understanding that 5th edition gives you more homebrew options and this, that, and the other. I've also seen a lot of the gatekeepers and down talk people can do about D&D. You guys need to fucking shut up. Okay? 2021. D&D is more popular than ever. And some of you may say, oh, this is ruining what the game was. How is it ruining by people being more accepting of it? Do you honestly all want to go back to that playing in your mother's basement situation, hiding the fact that you're playing D&D from everyone else? I fucking don't. I like the fact that I can tell people I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, that I've got my own homebrew campaign that my players are playing through, and the fact that we record our episodes, or when we come back, we're going to be going streaming live our episodes so we can share our story with everybody. Some people want to rant at Critical Role, saying that the people who got into D&D through Critical Role aren't your proper D&D people. They don't know the roots, and it's just like, or even having to go about the people at Critical Role, going like, well, they're just doing this because it's all, they're doing it because it's this, that, and the other, or it's all scripted. How can you tell? How can you not tell it's scripted and this, that, and the other? And it's just like, you guys need to shut up. I am serious. You guys just need to shut the fuck up. Yes, there are certain things in D&D that are clunky and horrible. If you're a player in this situation, guess what? You could talk to your dungeon master about shit like that, okay? And if the dungeon master is going to be iffy about it, then maybe you all have to find a new dungeon master who's a bit more open, or maybe you just kind of learn to brunt up and get on with it, like people used to do. And if you're a DM and you have like players who are being constantly annoying, things that just, you gotta talk to them as well. This isn't a case of, oh, I'm just gonna rant about it and not gonna do anything about it. It's like, if you're not doing anything about it, it's not gonna get done, guys. Alright? Simple as. And to all those gatekeepers saying that certain people can't play for whatever reason, grow the fuck up. Okay? Stop being the first edition twats from your mother's basement that only you and your closest friends could play. Alright? I know a lot of people who want to get into Dungeons and Dragons, but can't. Some of them can't because they have busy schedules, so they can't really play. Some can't because there's no one close by them who lives close by that you can play with. Others can't because they're fucking scared. I get fucking why. I have heard so many horror D&D stories about players and DMs. It's unreal that I'm beyond glad I have not personally ever dealt with anything like that. I've dealt with new players before. Fine. When I first started this main campaign I'm running, I was a new DM. So it kind of worked all good. I've seen experienced players come in and coach new players. I've seen experienced players be a bit more relaxed with newer and fresher DMs and things like that, or DMs who want to do differently. And things like that. You can't have this problem with people. And if someone's going to come in, if a player's going to come in and be like, well, I want to do this, I want to do that, I'm sorry, the DM kind of does get final word on a lot of this shit. So if you're not going to be at least lenient with the DM or even ask the DM beforehand, yeah, you're going to have a very hard fucking time. And vice versa, as a DM with like players who are very pushy at things, it's just like, can't tell them to fuck off. Thankfully, I've never been in that position myself, but yeah. And then let's kind of the other side talk about this as well. Why don't we talk about like some of the people who have gotten into D&D through Critical Role, like myself. Not every DM is going to be a Matt Mercer. Matt Mercer has been playing D&D for fucking years now. He is bloody brilliant at DMing. I know a lot of DMs, especially newer DMs. I myself, and I'm not excluding myself from this, do try to imitate a lot of Matt Mercer's kind of ways of DMing. I do. There's certain things I try to emulate because he's just brilliant. But not all DMs are going to be like that. I mean, I've played for a DM. I was a player to a DM who was incredibly monotoned. Didn't choose accents or do any accents or different voices for his characters, which is fine. If that's how he DMs, that's how he DMs. It's fine. And then vice versa, for any DMs who get like players or new DMs after Critical Role, and they get like players, and it's like, well, they're not going to be like the rest of the Critical Role. You aren't going to get these kind of people who are going to be doing these great fancy voices or are going to have these different ideas of how to play or have these characters perfectly suited up. That's very specific to how that they play their game. You have to remember that these guys were playing their homebrew game or homebrew campaign for a good couple of years before Critical Role became a thing online. So you just need to lower your expectations, people. And other people need to just give slack to the new people coming in. What needs to be done is DMs and players need to be open. Old DMs and players need to be open and bringing these people in. Maybe, I mean, some DMs out there maybe should probably run like a 3.5 games. Or open gaze. I mean, it's something I want to do at some point. I want to have a place where people can come in who've never played D&D before, and they can book in a time with their friends, and they can get introduced to D&D in a proper way. They can understand how D&D is done. They can go over everything and do like a small one-shot campaign there and then, and learn how to do it. And if they could find someone to DM, or one of them takes over the DM, and this and the other, that's a better way to do it. But all those gatekeepers, all those people who say like certain people shouldn't be playing D&D and this and the other, you all need to get the fuck off the internet, or all need to lighten up a bit. Simple as. I think that's the issue with like toxicity in online nowadays. We're all behind the screen, especially nowadays with the pandemic going on. We're all behind the screen, so we're all just quite happy to kind of give off these horrible things out to people because hey, they're not in front of us. They're not going to hurt us. No, we're fine behind the screen, our phones or our laptops or computers or whatever. This translates quite a bit now to gaming. Now, this one is a bit of an odder subject. So, when I was a fair bit younger, I was a massive Call of Duty player. Did play quite a bit online. Never got really competitive because I'm not that great at that kind of first-person shooter game. But, yeah. I remember getting horrible messages from people about how I should stop playing, how I'm horrible, stop doing this, stop doing that, just go die. Now, I get that in games like that, shit like that does kind of occur quite often. Not gonna make someone like me stop. Not even the slightest. So, but I'm not going to talk about the idiot smack talk that those games breed. That's just horrible shit altogether. No, I'm going to talk about some of the horrible stuff in things like MMORPGs or Other online games like Overwatch or or like League of Legends and things like that. Toxic players exist in those games in a very incredibly horrible way. I now, first podcast I did say I was a big WoW player, and I still am. I have seen so much horrible toxicity in WoW that it's unreal. Understanding me that probably they can't monitor all of it because it's words. But in that case, when you're being kicked out of the dungeon with no reason or excuse, and no one even had, and none of the other players in the game have the balls to even say like, "Yeah, dude, this is why you're kicked," kind of thing. I've had that happen to me a number of times in dungeons. It's horrible. It's fucking horrible. If anything, not finding out even why I was kicked. It's just like, oh no, you're kicked, you're gone, goodbye. Overwatch. I've had people message me through Overwatch, being like, you shouldn't be playing that character, and I'm just like, no, this is the character I'm used to. I play this character because this is one of the characters I'm confident with. You can see exactly where I'm going here with a sense of toxicity that exists in these games. It's horrible, but it exists. It's it's a painful thing that it does. Why don't we talk a little bit more about the I'm offended crowd as well? So this hasn't taken on overly too much steam recently, or in these last year or so, but it's still out there, and it's still out there enough that we are still paying attention to these people. Now, like I said, I'm not going to make this political, but I'm going to focus this from the sense of the geek standpoint. As much as I can, I think. I think this is just going to be me ranting at society a bit, but society needs to be ranted at every so often just to understand that, yeah, you guys are idiots. For the most part, most of the time. But society are full of idiots. You can't be offended by everything. You can't. The fact that it attacks the geek community in such a way does hit a little bit too close to the heart for me. Now, there's a lot of things I love as a geek. A lot of things I follow as a geek and always will. But to turn around and hear people being offended by these things, I'll go back. So, a couple of years back on my other YouTube channel, I was doing these like vlogs, these video blogs about certain things in the world that I had been noticing quite a bit. I done a particular one of these blogs I did. I was talking about how the character Apu was taken out of The Simpsons because it was considered a racial slur. Never mind that almost every other character in The Simpsons is designed as a racial slur or stereotype, as it is. You have a Mexican guy who is on a Mexican TV show and speaks only Mexican. You have, oh god, I can't even remember all of it. I don't watch The Simpsons that often anymore nowadays, I'm afraid. But yeah, almost every foreign character on that show was a stereotype of foreign characters. And not just foreign characters, there's several like American-based characters in that show that were just obvious stereotypes. You had Kent Brockman, a very stereotypical reporter anchorman. You had the comic book guy who poke at geeks. Yeah, grew up in his mother's basement, owns a comic book shop now, fat as hell, doesn't stop eating junk food all the time. Kind of pinstone for certain geeks probably back in the day. And things like that. You had like the typical American family, the husband that's fucking huge and fat and overweight and has a drinking problem and this, that, and the other. And it's like, you have like Mo, who is like the guy who owns a very dirty and seedy bar, who turns out to be a complete and utter creep. The stereotypical because they have to be, because that's where the comedy is coming from. You can't just go, well, no. Especially after how long the Simpsons have been going. Now you want to kick up a fuss? And of course, yes, I know it's going to be... I don't want to point a finger at certain people. on this one, especially with how cancel culture is nowadays, which is something I absolutely fucking hate. I hate cancel culture with a passion. Um, yeah, but Simpsons aren't the only ones being touched by this cancel culture and I'm offended group. A lot of things are. If if you don't believe me, simply look at the news of geek culture in the last few years and see the amount of things that are getting caught up on and being pulled out and being like, well, we need to stop this. This needs to be stopped. We can't let our kids see this. It's like, there's no break anymore for us. You know? The episode I did last week, I talked a lot about like the darker things that needs to be talked about, especially mainly in Dungeons and Dragons. That's the kind of thing that will be pulled up by certain people just because I'm talking about it. I'm not insinuating people to go and do it. I'm not telling people to go and do it. I never would. Do not get me wrong at all. I never would. And I wouldn't even want to be making fun of people who've been through those kind of shitty situations. But just because I talked about it, people would want to cancel me over it. Or would. Or they want to call me up and I'm saying, well, I'm offended. Unless it's happened to you, you're not offended. You just want your voice to be fucking heard. Which is fine. We all want our voice to be heard. It's the freaking 2021. We have the internet, for fuck's sake. But calm the fuck down. Let people enjoy certain things in life. Okay? I have the things I enjoy in my life as a geek. More of this stuff gets cancelled, less of life I enjoy. And like I said, I'm not going to point a finger at anybody on this shit. I'm not. Like I said, everything I've been ranting about today has got deep ties with me for whatever reason, or this and that. But I've ranted about it because partly I'm one of those people who just every so often I need to get things off my chest. I can't just not say kind of thing. And I'm not one for doing Facebook posts a lot of the time, or doing these blogs where I talk about it, or going to these mass rallies and speakerphoning it all to a bunch of people I don't know. I'm not that person. I'm going to find someone, I'm going to sit down and rant, and I'm going to rant like this. So sorry for everyone who's probably tuned to this episode thinking like, oh, I wonder what geek topic we talk about now. And I was like, no, I'm ranting about geek culture a bit. And not necessarily geek culture itself, but I'll tell you, that'll be the last thing I'm going to rant about. The average geek. Now, a few weeks ago, I talked about the difference and the changing of what the word geek and nerd means throughout the years. Well, along with that change of what the word means, the physical appearance and the physical look of what a typical geek has changed as well. So you go back all that time, and like the typical geek probably is a lot closer to the comic book guy from The Simpsons, probably just not as fat or this, that, and the other. But you're typical looking at your standard kind of like, heavy, thick glasses, pimples or spots all over their face or something, kind of doesn't get out in the sun a lot, this, that, and the other. And nowadays, you probably couldn't tell who's a geek and who isn't, just because so many people are. Which is a good thing. Just, the more open you make something, the more criticism will come its way. It's one thing I've definitely noticed over the last several years of watching different things that I love and enjoy explode into worldwide enjoyment. It comes big, and everyone has a say on what this or that is. Which is fine. Everyone has a right to say what they want. Just remember the difference between what an opinion is and what fact and truth are. Opinion is what you think. Fact is what the fucking truth is. Well, I would say I hope you all enjoyed this episode, but you probably haven't. You've just watched a 30-year-old man with long hair and a beard rant about the culture he so loves. Yeah, great episode, isn't it? But no, thank you everyone for watching today. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Please don't forget to go to our Facebook pages, Crit Takers and A Day in the Tavern. Like them to follow for all updates and things of going on. I'll put somewhere here as well. You know, it's like right here. A video link to our D&D show, which of all the episodes where we started way back a couple of years ago up until the last one we did and about this time last year. And then here, somewhere, probably not even showing up yet as well, knowing me, here will be a link to all the other Day in the Tavern episodes so far. And up here will be a subscribe bubble. Well, not here, but somewhere right where my mic is will be a subscribe bubble. Subscribe to this channel. Please don't forget to look out for each other, love each other, and to remember that you all are important to somebody. So, until next time, everybody, keep drinking.